Welcome to the third class in Jay Levin's Life Mastery course. Over the next hour, Jay teaches fundamental skills for emotional mastery so that negative feelings don't dominate your life.
So welcome to the third class of Life Mastery Basics, and today we're going to deal with emotional mastery, which means coming out of the patterns of letting your reactive emotions run you and dominate your life or upset you when it's completely unnecessary. Before we begin, though, I want to review the work from last week when we went through the process where you identified your personal and specific patterns from childhood that are still operative. Your reactive patterns, your fixes for those patterns, your belief systems about yourself and the world behind those patterns. And if you remember, I encouraged you to keep a journal, a notebook journal, and to green light doing that, make it a fun thing to do, because in writing these things down and observing them, you're strengthening your observer self, and your observer self is your pathway to your true self. The more you get detached, go from detachment to unattachment to the way you're behaving, and you get perspective. By the fourth or fifth time you catch yourself in something, you'll be in a place where you'll say, wait a minute, I'm not going to do that behavior. You know, somebody just said something to me, I'm not just going to run away, or I'm not going to come back at them this way. I'm going to try something different for dealing with this situation, so I'm not in my reactive pattern. And the classes, as we go forward, are going to teach you a lot of tools. One of the limitations now is, of course, you get into reactive because you don't have other tools, and you haven't trained yourself in other tools. You know, I don't like to encourage people to do things as homework as a burden. This is your life, this is your commitment to yourself. And you don't have to report to me as a teach, but the one thing that I've learned about this is that among the most effective things you can do is really do the journaling of what I call the room, you know, where you recognize what the patterns were, you observe them, you own the patterns, and you look at how you can modify them, you know, the acronym ROOM. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the better you get at recognizing that your innocence in these patterns. You fell off the bicycle, and that's all that happened to you. The machine took over, you fell off the bicycle, you're not to blame for it. You're a little innocent kid, the same innocent kid we saw in the guided meditation from the last class. So what we want to do is just hold the space of I'm a student. I'm just a student. I'm getting a better education. I'm learning that 2 and 2 is 4. Somebody taught me 2 and 2 is 5, so I acted this way. It's perfectly cool. And I'm just going to reteach myself as a student rather than somebody who sits back and judges myself as a failure. You know, and if you find yourself thinking, I failed at this, I did that again, that's a part of you, that's your traumatized self, and forgive yourself for owning it. Don't give authority to that voice. And we'll be doing some more work on that in the class on Mind Talk. Okay, so let's get down to a discussion about emotions and what the nature of emotions are. So emotions, as I discussed in the orientation, we mostly are functioning from the most dramatic negative emotions. They're the ones that have dominance much of the time, subtly insinuating themselves throughout the course of a day. And that came from the childhood experience of not being allowed to express all your feelings, not being educated in all your feelings, not being allowed to experience the subtle nuances of feeling that we're capable of. And in that suppression, we developed this very strong base set of emotions that come forward in reactive ways where we're over anxious, or we're over angry, or we're over sad, or over grieved, because we haven't learned that, and we're just tapping into that experience from childhood where the world seems to be reflecting childhood. We go back, what was not right in childhood, instantly the machine takes us into that well of emotions that we haven't fully learned to let flow through us. So tonight we're going to work on methods for managing those emotions as they come forward and for taking down their temperature. So we want to start disempowering them, and we want to manage the emotions as well when they do come up much better than we are now. So I'm going to teach you a variety of techniques for doing this. And the first place I like to start, even though it's not one of the immediate emotional management places, the place I like to start in this conversation is the idea that emotions happen on a dream level. So we want to work on them on a dream level. If you really take a look at what happens when you're dreaming, the archetypes of the world, visual effects, creatures, beings, archetypes, experiences of the world are coming forward, and there's a drama going on in your dreams. The drama is actually the spirits and archetypes of your healed self, trying to come to grip with the archetypes and visions of your traumatized self, so that, in fact, you can wake up in the morning feeling refreshed and having some of the tension of the day and the struggle that's always going on, both consciously and unconsciously, between the traumatized self dealt with. You know, people who are considered to be awake, they'll tell you, I stopped dreaming, just like this, their mind stopped chattering at them. They'll tell you, I don't dream anymore. People who wake up tired most mornings and have to struggle out of bed, it's because in that drama, the traumatized self tends to be still winning. The energy for the true self, the authentic self, is not sufficient to completely handle the drama of the traumatized self, which is being acted out in dreams. So before we get to management techniques, what I want to do is I want to teach you a simple technique for implanting in your unconscious and in your dream space some helpful new archetypes. So what I want you to do to start with, we're going to pick the archetype, okay? I want you to write down two things. One is the expectation you've had for yourself. For those of you who are watching this on DVD, pause this and go get a piece of paper if you don't have one. And what I want you to do is write down your expectation you've had for yourself in which you feel you've most failed out and have the heaviest charge on. You're angry at yourself. You're disappointed about yourself. You think you've messed up in some way. And you've got a heavy emotional charge on it. Grief or anger at yourself or just despair, heartbreak, whatever it is. Write down what that challenge is. And then I want you to write down a second thing, just footnote it, just make it brief. And I want you to write down the second thing. And the second thing is where the world has failed you, where your expectations for the world have failed you. I want you to write that down. Where you have the heaviest charge, the one where the world is really just hasn't shown up for you and you're really upset about it. Wherever you have the most upset, where the world hasn't shown up for you. It hasn't given me enough money, too much struggle, too many people abusing me. The world doesn't ever even see me, doesn't recognize me, etc. Okay? Okay, good. Okay, so now here's what I want you to do. I'm going to take you through a guided meditation. I want to take all you people out there watching this through a guided meditation. And I want you to listen to me very precisely as we do this. Just follow exactly what I say, right? I'll be talking almost all the time while we do this, right? And you just follow my guidance. So the first thing I want you to do is close your eyes, take a couple of nice, deep, soothing breaths. Not overly deep, don't energize yourself too much, just soothing, nice breaths. So you feel centered. Feel your seat being present physically. Good. And now, just let yourself seek out, keep your eyes closed, very important. Just let yourself seek out a vision of a place where you're most at peace. It could be anywhere. It could be your bedroom with a book, cuddle up with your pet. It could be out at the beach. It could be in the woods. Someplace where you're alone, but really at peace. You're feeling as peaceful and safe as you can imagine yourself feeling. And I'm going to give you people out there and in the room here time to just to be there quietly. Okay, so now I just want you to listen to me very, very carefully. Something is going to happen when I say it's going to happen, right? And that something is going to be a being or a creature or an icon, a symbol. It could be a symbol, any kind of symbol. It could be anything that's a visual representation, an archetypal visual representation, something your dream mind can grasp. Something's going to happen in which an archetype or a dream symbol that represents the expectation, the feeling you had, and the expectation and the bad energy you had about where you failed yourself, where you didn't meet your own expectation. So it's going to come in and it's going to attack you, just go at you. So let that happen right now and pay close attention to what happens, what it looks like, what it feels like, how it attacks you. Just let that play out. So next, another being, creature, icon is going to come into the scene, right? And this being, icon, or creature is your ally. And it's going to protect you and defend you from your antagonist. Let that happen right now. And watch as that plays out. So whenever that seems to be finished, take your time, but whenever it seems to be finished, open your eyes, and I'll tell you what to do next.
Coming up now, Jay describes the next steps and how to benefit from the images and awareness just experienced.
Good. So what I'd like you to do next is take a fresh piece of paper, and I want you to draw a scene, draw your antagonist, and draw your ally. And then give them both names, whatever name comes for you. Just give them both names. Those of you out there watching the DVD can just simply pause the DVD while you do this. So this process is going to take a while, so I'm going to encourage you to do this when you finish. Just do a quick idea sketch and then finish it up when you get home, okay? Now the next thing I want you to do is I want you to write out on that piece of paper what the expectation was, so you have a picture image of this. You have an image picturing what the statement was, where you failed yourself, you had an expectation, and you think you failed yourself. And for homework, when you're not watching the DVD, I want you to do the same thing about your expectation. Go back, take yourself through the same process, exact same process, and see what comes in around your expectation for how the world failed you. We won't take the time to do that here, but you can do it at home in your own time. Create that same visualization with that same expectation and draw it. After you finish the work on that expectation for the world, you might want to just list your other major expectations in the world where you failed yourself and do this process on all of them. Where the world has failed you, where you have a charge. The idea of this is the more you do with these things, the more observational strength you get and the more detached you get from them because you begin to observe them. And also because you begin to plant these images in your unconscious and they'll filter into your dream space. You're actually working beneath the reactive level of the neural net to introduce a whole other set of images and allies to the experience that you're having. And this works on an unconscious level, but it works on the level that, in fact, our unconscious communicates with our conscious, which is archetypes and dream space linked to emotional trauma or linked to a sense of liberation from the emotional trauma. So this can be very, very profound. And one of the things I encourage people to do is to take these things home and build a sort of healing wall at your home. Take them home, or if you're at home, build a healing wall, a private space, where you can put these things up and look at them and get distance on them. Ultimately, they're gremlins in you. They're ideas and thought forms, and negative thought forms, they're gremlins. And the more we see them and can distance them by making them archetypes and positioning them, the less power they have over you. And a number of people I know who've done the class, and myself included, use our allies in difficult situations. We visualize our allies because it shifts our energy. For example, I came up with this process the first time. I did it for myself, and I found that my expectation demon was this big, ugly, beast-like face. It was just a head and a face. It wanted to eat my face, you know, sort of like something out of 1984, the rats coming at you. It just wanted to consume me, wanted to kill me. And I found my ally was this incredibly sweet energy of a 6-year-old, 7-year-old girl. The innocence of a 6-year-old feminine energy. that was just so soothing and playful and alive with caringness, etc., and sweet. So sometimes when I'm feeling a bit of stress, I'll think about that girl's energy and shift to it and let it play out in me. So it helps reorient me. And I know it helps on an unconscious level because I've actually seen this creature and others that I've done in this process show up in my dreams as allies. So we're working on this Jungian level here that's very effective on the emotional level. And the emotional level is always linked to expectations. You do not have an emotional reaction to something without an expectation. If you don't have an expectation that something should be this way and this way and this way, you're not going to have a negative emotional reaction because you would just be in that place where it would just seem to be what is. This is what is. So at a later time, we're going to learn how to do an exercise on how to surrender to it. Today, we're going to focus for the rest of the class more on managing the negative emotions rather than just surrendering and dealing with expectations, because expectations are of the conceptual level. That little kid wanting the world to be better and different and still wanting it to come to them and have it fixed. And we need to be aware of those expectations and track our expectations behind every negative emotion and try to let go of that expectation. But the specific processes I'll be teaching you for that in next week's class. This week's class, the rest of this, we're going to focus on managing the emotion itself as it comes up, other than on the archetypal level. So before we get to training a specific emotion, I want to share with you a little bit more depth of understanding about the nature of emotions themselves and how we deal with it and how we culturally deal with it. The process from our traumatized self is to allow our emotions to be the dictators of our sense of reality and to try to turn away, block out, struggle with negative emotions. We don't want to feel negative emotions, right? So what we do is we build up a lot of tension in ourselves, struggling with the negative emotions. I don't want to feel this. I don't know how I get out of this, right? So some of us narcotize those emotions with alcohol or drugs or sex. Some of us just keep fighting them and all kinds of different things to change the negative emotion. With the idea is it doesn't belong in me. It's an alien presence. I don't like it. So what we're actually doing is what in spiritual circles is known as suffering over our suffering. So one of the first rules of spiritual principles is to stop suffering over your suffering, right? An emotion is an emotion. If you allow it to happen without trying to resist it, it'll move through you a lot faster than if you try to resist it, right? So that's one of the principles of emotional management. But there's a higher way of even looking at that. And the higher way is to say, all my emotions have some value, and I'm not going to be turned off by any of them. I'll just let them all flow in the moment, right? Which is a very hard task because we're not trained for it. I have a friend who's working on a book about reaching enlightenment through the emotions. And he has a belief that all emotions are good, that the pleasure of life, the meaning of life, is to be here in our emotions and to feel all our emotions. And if you block out the negative ones and don't let them move through you, you then can't experience the exquisiteness of the range of emotions, most of which you don't even have names for, but represents the most extraordinary experience of being in this life. So if you're with this guy and you go to a movie and there's a little scene that might give you a tiny little lump in your throat, he's bawling his eyes out. If he gets angry, he has these most interesting anger fits where he's never really attacking anybody, but he doesn't hide it in public. And you see he's just getting it out of his system in a funny kind of way, just holding it back. And if you talk to him about his experiences about anything, like he may go on vacation, he's not describing this happened and this happened and this happens. He's saying somebody did this and I felt this and it took me to this place inside myself. And he'll describe some subtle emotion. And then she passed this way and he came over this way. And that moved me into myself. And I felt this inside myself. And I had this awareness from that, feeling that emotion, right? He's having a whole different experience of life than the rest of us are, because he's beyond being stuck in the grossness of the negative emotions and the power of the negative emotions. So that's an ideal place we'd all like to get to. And to get there, we've got to learn to master the big elements of the negative emotions.
Coming up next, Jay details the great benefits of learning to express your feelings in a healthy way, and he describes just those ways.
So let's look at some ways to do this. Well, the first way for dealing with the negative emotions is to express them in a safe place. So everybody who's ever heard of primal anger therapy knows that people go into a room and they beat pillows and they scream, et cetera, with the idea of being emptying that vessel of the core childhood anger that's been impacting you forever and stuck energetically in your cells and is driving a lot of your negative thought forms, because negative thought forms run off anger energy to a significant degree, certainly angry ones do, and getting it out of your system. And most people walk around with a lot of suppressed anger that they're not even aware of. So the idea being is that you open yourself up to releasing your anger. But there's also deep grief work, allowing yourself to cry. There's deep fear work, allowing yourself to scream, etc. And the basics of this work is until you empty the well, you don't know what's at the bottom of it. So at least start emptying the well and coming to the sense of, if I can move enough of this through me in some dramatic way, then I might be able to shift to a different place inside. I might be shifted to a different place inside myself, right? So what does that mean in terms of the release work? Well, you can go yell into pillows and get in touch with something you're angry about, right? What I recommend is people get in touch with something they're really angry about and track it back to what they were angry about in childhood. Take that whole volume of stuff you've been angry about in life and use the immediate trigger to get into that feeling and let it out. Let it out, kill that pillow, really yell it out, relieve the anger through the day by yelling in safe places, etc. This is just one technique. Now, there's built-in inhibitions about us doing it. The inhibitions of, I'll look like a fool, I don't like the way I look. 2, I'm not allowed to do this, I'm not allowed to show this anger. This is not socially permissible, it's not really right. I don't want to see myself this way because I don't want this ugly vision of myself. But even beyond that is, I don't want to tap into that place where I want to kill. So let me tell you something. The most important thing you have to know about anger is that it comes from a place where you want to kill. We all want to kill on some level when we have anger. It's the core of it. We're socialized into a society that kills. It kills and punishes, right? We go to wars. We do murder on each other. Those places haven't done away, want to kill the people. We want our revenge. We want to get back. Whenever you're attacking another person, for any reason, you may say, I don't want to kill them, but there's some little part of you that fundamentally would like to kill. It's the absolute product of growing up with a suppressed self in a dysfunctional, top-down, hierarchical culture. You can't escape it. There's some part of you inside you that's going to have that unless you've been very blessed or unless you've come in very enlightened and blessed in your family life and family structure, etc. There's some element in that that can be tapped when the circumstances are right. And it's important to own it, not because it makes you evil, because it doesn't make you evil. It only means that child anger wants to get out and destroy what's coming back that seems to be destroying it. And to suppress that anger, to not own it, to not be there, means it's in there as a potential ticking time bomb. And one day you lose it in some meeting and you want to throw some guy out the window because he's doing this or that, and you don't do that, but you say something really off the mark, and there you go. You blow a deal or something like that, or you blow a relationship. The depth of that feeling when not owned counts for a lot of social functioning. Same for grief. A lot of the grief we carry around is because when we get sad, we've never grieved out the fullness of the grieving well. So we haven't really emptied the well. Same for fear, right? A lot of the anxiety we fear is because we never let ourselves just scream out our fear. Whoever does that, when you suppress it enough, you have panic attacks. And then you try to control the panic attack, and there's a whole body of professionals who are trained in dealing with your anxiety attacks and prophetic attacks and phobias and things like that. But the core of it is you've got this obliteration fear that may not be based on reality, but it's certainly running in you. And that obliteration fear never gets to get expressed in a safe place. So the expression of the deep feelings is just one of the techniques. It's the most dramatic. And for people who are really overridden with some of their feelings, it's an important one. And it's something that people should use in the context of whatever works for them, of the other techniques I'm going to teach them, but not be afraid of it. Experiment with it, see where it leads you. But keep in mind that the important thing is your emotions are not you, your gross emotions are not you, and the more you can move them through you and get to the other side, the better off you're going to be. So with that in mind, I want to tell a story about my father and mother. They were together 52 years. They loved each other a lot, and they were very dysfunctional with each other. They simply did not have the tools to come out of the blame game, to understand each other emotionally, want the other person to change all the time. You know, they came from a high school educated culture that had very few emotional tools other than fight or flight, and they were light years away from the sophistication that I've learned one generation later, because I've been able to absorb what the culture has developed. And they had not yet. My mother did later, somewhat later in life, and so started to change behind it. But at the beginning of her life and the years they were together, that was very difficult. And my mother used to say about my father, she would say, don't take this wrong, don't misunderstand me, but it would be a real blessing if your father goes first before I go. This is when obviously they were older. And the reason she'd say, and which we all understood, was that your father's not going to be able to get along without me. He's really going to have a hard time. And she was right, because of the peculiar personality that my father was. My father was this very simple guy, very sweet guy, very loving guy, had his biases, had his garbage, had his issues here and there, but still, his fundamental nature was of being very authentic in his own right. And the thing he most couldn't understand was phonies, and he mostly saw other people's stances and idealized selves and seeking for approval and maneuvers as phoniness. So he decided the best way to be in the world was to stay away from people. So he was just happy to come home, be with my mother, get through the work during the day, come home, read his paper, watch his TV, hang out, you know, and that was his emotional base. And she would have to do any amount of socializing. So he was very dependent on her for kind of emotional stability, any kind of emotional stability. And sure enough, my mother died first. And my father, being the simple guy he was and being attached to as he was, went into this profound shock. And because he was so authentic, he didn't hide anything, he wailed and he moaned. And he said the corniest things about her. You know, she's the greatest woman ever. How am I going to, there'll never be another woman for me, all this stuff. I mean, he's already 80, 78 or 80 years old, and there'll never be another woman for me, all that stuff, 50 years. It's not that he just said it once or twice, or just cried once or twice for a few days, or grieved for a week. He went at it nonstop, unrelentingly, for months and months and months and months and months. It was the same story. He would go into a restaurant, and somebody would remind him something. He'd start crying to some stranger about this. He didn't know how to deal with it. And about 9 or 10 months later, he starts showing some improvement and coming out of it. And I get a call one day from my sister. It's about a year down the line. And my sister says to me, you know, I have some news about our father. My sister, like my father, lived in Phoenix at the time. She still does. So she says, do you want the good news first or the bad news first? I said, give me the good news first. She said, well, he's finally over it. He's finally over it. There's no more crying, no more lamenting. It's done. It's finished with him. So I said, okay, what's the bad news? And she said, he's chasing a 30-year-old redhead and he's dishonoring our mother's name. And I cracked up and I thought, this is great, you know. And the reason I tell this story, the moral of the story is that nobody knows what their spirit's going to be or what energy is going to come into their spirit or what life force, no matter how crazy it may find an outlet. It's going to come into your spirit when you empty the well. And he emptied the well by not having any macho bullshit about being tough or anything like that. He just let the well empty of his grief, and he emptied a lifetime of grief in that process, not just for my mother, but he didn't know it was a lifetime of grief, but he emptied a lifetime of grief, and next thing you know, he was hot for a 30-year-old redhead. And, you know, she wasn't interested in him that way, but they became good friends. He sort of became her surrogate father or grandfather, and they were friends for years until he died. But he would have, he had the most, because he was ill-educated, he had this childish crush on her, this teenage crush on her. So I like to tell this story because other than the idea that once you empty the well, there's a unknowable amount of energy and any coming forward, another amount of connectiveness to life coming forward, rather than simply depression and sadness. But there's essence of innocence that comes forward. The essence of expressing emotions is innocent, and we don't express our emotions because we think there's something wrong with expressing our emotions. And so we do it in a way that doesn't serve us. So some people need to yell every day. I'm one of those people. One of my core was anger. I've had to do a fair amount of anger stuff. I got angry as a kid, and I've got a big well on that. So I yell at my anger in the shower every day, or sometimes in the car. Something comes up me, but I don't take it as the world is wrong. I just say, I'm getting triggered. I'm not fully awake yet. My prayer is I'll be fully awake one day. I'm not fully past my own trauma. And it takes time to get past your own trauma. You have to be patient with it. But I don't have to suffer over my suffering. I don't have to think that whatever I think I'm angry about is real. It's just that I've got the anger, and it has to do with this illusion that somehow there's something wrong. So venting is the way to deal with expression of it. Expression of deep negative emotions is one way to move them through you and to allow them. Having said that, there are other methods. There are methods that are developed as tools in the culture that are doable in the moment, less dramatic, and can help you in enormous ways.
Jay now begins sharing a number of other skills for mastering difficult emotions, beginning with the process he calls soma breathing.
So let's spend the rest of this time, I want to spend the rest of the class teaching you some of the methods of dealing with trauma that are less dramatic. The first thing I want to teach you, I call it the soma breathing. Soma breathing is a way of releasing tension. Those of you watching the DVD, and for those of you here with me in the class, what I want you to do now, and encourage you to do now, is close your eyes. And I want you to get back in touch with that negative emotion you were feeling around your expectation, that sense of frustration or anger with yourself. And if that's dissipated, think of something else that's bothering you, that's either really bothers you bad, that's recently you're feeling trauma about, or historically has bothered you, and you can easily have a charge about, and a pretty sizable charge. And I want you to switch to that thinking and the feeling. Okay, very good. So now what I'd like you to do is notice where that feeling is in your body. Just notice what part of your body is feeling more irritated. It's taking the burden of the pain of this negative emotion. Switch your mind from the story about it to the body part. Put your awareness on your body part. Good. Now, without changing your breathing pattern, just keep this breathing pattern. Don't have to deep breathe. But I want you to now see your breath coming in as a sort of gentle, soothing touch. It comes in, it touches that area that's in pain, that's in trauma, that's intense or anxious. Just touches it gently, soothes it, carries it, and when you breathe out, carries away some of the tension. So it's this loving, sweet touch of breath. Just gentle and soothing, comforting. Nothing has changed in your breathing pattern. It's just your awareness as the breath itself has changed. Something that's warm and gentle and soothing. So let it keep touching that part of you that's in pain. Now, while you're doing this, just listen to me carefully, right? The next step is we're going to add a color. So I want you to find whatever, just trust whatever comes forward, and find a soothing color to add to the soothing breath. So the soothing breath and the soothing color are going to come in together, and they're going to touch that part of your body that's feeling the difficulty. So let that happen. And just note whether it feels even more helpful than just the breath alone, or maybe less helpful. We're trying to learn what works for you here. All right, so now I'm going to add a third element, and just listen to me as I describe this. Don't try to do it. Just keep the breath coming with the color and the soothing air. But listen also as I describe what you're going to do, right? In this third element, the color and the air are going to come through your crown chakra, come down through the top of your head, rather than just through your nostrils. You're going to visualize them coming through your crown chakra, moving down through your third eye, moving down through your throat, coming down to your heart, right? Reaching your heart level in the middle of your breast, going up under your heart 3 times. In other words, it's going to go from the bottom of your heart up over the heart and circle your heart 3 times, counterclockwise, and then it's going to go to the place where you're trying to soothe. And when you exhale, it's going to come up to your heart level. It's going to go over your heart 3 times and come back to center, go up and out through your crown chakra and release into the universe, right? Now, when I say to do this, you have to see it going pretty quickly, but that's possible. Just see it coming in pretty quickly, moving very rapidly down your head, down to the bottom of your heart, circling up over your heart 3 times, going to the place where you want to soothe, soothing it, coming back up, out over your heart 3 times, and back out. Okay? So do that now. Okay? So again, comes down to the top, around your heart, from the bottom up 3 times, bottom of your heart up. Comes back up, goes around your heart 3 times, top and up and out. Okay, so now come back into, open your eyes, and come back into the present time. So, for those of you out there, it'd be good if you wrote down what the nature of that experience was and identified for yourself which of the 3 techniques worked best for you, where you got the most soothing, right? In the class, who would want to share the nature of that experience? Just tell me the nature of the experience for you, how you felt doing it, what you got out of it. Okay, so some of you may have found that it worked best with all 3 elements. Some of you may have found it worked with 2 elements. You use at home whatever works best for you. There's no written formulas. We all find our own ways and our own tools. You use what works for you. I want to say something, though, about the meditation. The meditation can be attached to stress relief or pain release or emotion release, or it can be done independently. I happen to think it's the best meditation I've ever come across. I just think it really opens you up, opens me up, rather. I think it makes a lot of clarity and makes for a lot of good feeling, and is a very highly effective meditation. So if you don't have a meditation practice, or even if you do and you want to try something new, try the heart one. And for those of you who are sophisticated and know the colors, the various colors of the chakras, one of the things you can do is, as you bring in the color, you can change the color as it moves through your body, so that as it reaches each of the chakras, it becomes the color of that chakra. And if you don't know what that is, you can go online and Google for colors of chakras, and you'll know in a second. So this is one of the steps, one of the techniques for soothing and dealing with immediately tension. This is very, very good for people in particular who have panic attacks, phobias, and to deal with anxiety, get quickly stressed out, and need to bring themselves down in a certain kind of way. very quickly. You take a little break, you go breathe into this. So whenever I have a student call me with some issues and they're saying, what should I do now? I'm having a panic attack, or I'm really in anxiety, or I'm really stressed. I most often will recommend this as the immediate aid, and it'll bring the temperature down enough to allow you to do some other things, okay? So let's go into some of those other things now. A couple of other techniques I want you to learn in this class that are really powerful.
In the next part of the class, Jay teaches a proven technique called heart math that has been profoundly helpful to many people.
So let's move on. The next thing I want to do is teach you is called heart math. And heart math, I'll explain it to you a little bit later. And all I'll tell you in advance is, if you remember the story I told you about the young woman who had been suicidal, who brought herself into a awakened state in a year, this is the technique she used. This is what turned her around. So once again, close your eyes, right? And let that negative feeling come forward again. It can be, again, from the expectation you had that you've disappointed, maybe the expectation of how the world let you down and that terrible feeling you have, or any other negative, bad feeling you have. Something happened recently that's still bothering you. Something happens constantly in your life that bothers you. Get in touch with that and feel that feeling. Let that negative feeling come into you. Good. I'm sensing you're all there. So what I'd like you to do next is see the story of that negative feeling, the drama behind it, as a sort of movie drama. So see it on the screen in your brain. See it in your head, see it in your brain, see the movie screen with this drama playing out that makes you feel the way you are. Okay, very good. So now pause the projector. Just let that projector go on pause so the moving picture stops. It's on pause. And switch your consciousness to your heart. Put your consciousness on your heart, beating in your chest. Right? Excellent. Good. Now let your heart fill up with something for which you're truly grateful. Maybe it's someone you love, and you're grateful they're in your life, a good friend. Maybe it's even your pet, or something you do, that some part of your life that always gives you joy, always makes you happy. Put your mind on that and let your heart fill up with that. Now, let that good feeling just suffuse your whole body, flow out from your heart, suffuse your whole body. So you're really feeling, I got it. This is great. I feel really good about this. Good. And now just let it fill up the whole room. You're glowing in the room with this good feeling. So now, without leaving this good feeling, just staying exactly in this good feeling, just gently turn your attention back to the movie on the screen and that drama that was happening earlier, and just look at it and see if its temperature has come down. See if you see other aspects that you didn't notice before. See if it seems a little bit different and less threatening and less bothersome. Just take a look at it through the prism of the positive feeling you're having right now. And let that play out a little bit. Good. Okay, so open your eyes now and come back into the room. Anybody notice a shift? Just raise your hands in the room and Think about it at home if you've noticed a shift, any kind of shift at all. So yes, I see you're shifting. You felt the shift. So that's almost inevitable. If you do it often enough, you'll get a shift, unless you're truly in panic, in which you should do the breathing exercise first. So this is called heart math, and it is perhaps now the most, if not the most, one of the most effective techniques being used in business in America. And the people who created it at the Heart Math Institute to get hired to go into companies that are dysfunctional, where there's toxic relationships between people and departments, between higher and lower, and train people in this method. Because even though it took us a while to do it, once you master it, you can do it in a blink. You can just really do it fast. And people change attitudes. They start dealing with each other from more understanding places, less reactive places, less emotional places, and it opens up a window, an opportunity for people to relate better and solve problems together and talk together better, and for each person to be feeling better generally and less of a victim in the circumstance, less, I don't want to be here another day, I don't want to be here another minute, I got to get out of this place, where's the next job I'm going to find fast, even in this terrible economy. So the nature of the work that was done here was by scientists working in the area of energetic fields, working with biofeedback machines. And what they learned over time within their work is that emotions have a frequency. So when you're angry, it's going to show up at a certain frequency. And that's basically true for everybody. Somebody's feeling anger, I'm feeling anger, and it'll show up here. Somebody's feeling grief, it'll show up with this frequency, right? Somebody's feeling fear, it'll show up with this frequency. You can measure the frequencies of emotions. They are energetic frequencies, like everything in the world has an energetic frequency to it. So once they measured the energetic frequencies, they began to notice something that was very interesting, which is that when they brought the frequencies towards each other, the heart frequency, which Greg Braden says is exactly the same beat as the center of the earth, the heart frequency was the one that had the most power. And most power in the sense that as you brought frequencies together, it held its ground more than the others. The others would yield. It was sort of the harmonizing frequency to the heart. So they said, oh, well, this is very interesting on an energetic level that this frequency would be able to do this to modulate the other frequencies. So then they said, what can we do? How do we invent something that would allow a person to give themselves different frequencies? And what they came up with was the exercise you just went through, in which you brought the heart frequency and a positive energy frequency to a negative picture, and you change your relationship to that negative picture. You were in control for the moment. You had a different sensibility. And the promise of this is if you do it regularly, you can heal a huge amount of your trauma, because you're not letting the trauma have authority over that moment in your life. You've developed a way to have a healthier energy have authority in a given moment. And you've made the choice to give it that authority, because you've been the one willing to say, I don't want to feel this energy, I'm going to switch to something else. You've green-lighted, essentially, the heart math energy. So that's sort of fairly large breakthrough for a mass population that's not been trained in the highest disciplines of spiritual exercise in some monastery. This is something just accessible to everybody, and lots of people around the country have learned heart math and are making progress with it. One of the blessings of living today is we learn tools to come out of the traumatized patterns, co-creative with the victim-perpetrator matrix we live in.
Coming up, Jay teaches another emotional mastery skill called the Sedona method.
So that's one valuable exercise. I want to show you another one that's similar, and this one's called the Sedona method. It's similar but different enough to be worth learning. And then we'll discuss how to choose to work with these. So again, close your eyes, and once again, summon forward or get in touch with some truly negative feeling you still have. If you've taken the sting out of this last one, pick a different one. If it still has plenty of sting in it, now that you're thinking about it again, or you can bring the sting back, go back to the sting of it. One of your failed expectations, it could be anything. Any drama, trauma, that you have an unpleasant reaction to. Any thought form you have an unpleasant reaction to. Okay, so now I want you to allow yourself to feel that negativity and that pain and that trauma just as deeply as you possibly can right here in this moment. Just allow yourself to feel it as deeply as you possibly can right here in this moment. Good. Okay, now we're going to do something. We're going to switch, right? And we're going to switch to as much of the opposite of this feeling as possible. And whatever little bit you can feel in the moment of the opposite. So if you're feeling very tight and restricted, allow yourself to feel more open. Whatever little bit of more openness you can. If you're feeling threatened, allow yourself to feel as protected and safe and okay and optimistic. It's going to work out. Whatever little bit of that you can feel. And if you're feeling angry, allow yourself to feel as hopeful and as self-nurturing as you can. I'll just take care of myself. I won't focus on them. What's making me angry? So whatever safety, openness you can allow yourself to feel, open up to that now, whatever amount you can. Good. Okay, now I want you to switch back. I want you to go back and allow yourself to feel however much of the negativity you still can feel, the painful emotion. Just allow yourself to feel that. Good. Now switch back to the positive. Allow yourself to feel as much of the positive as you can. Much of the safety, the openness, the protection, whatever good feeling was there, the optimism. Switch back to that. Good. Now switch back to the negative again. Allow yourself to feel whatever you can still feel of the negative. Good. Switch back to the positive again and let yourself feel as much as you can of the safety and the optimism and the good stuff. Okay, now open your eyes and come back into the room. Good. So if you keep doing this, the good stuff is going to trump the negative stuff. It's going to be harder and harder and harder to access the negative stuff unless you're in some flaming level of trauma in the moment, okay? The vast majority of the times, you're going to be able to feel much better, and the bad stuff is going to feel less bad. And that's basically the same principle as heart math. The good will trump the bad, the resonance of the positive, because it's more aligned with your true self. It's more of the energy that's your natural self. It's going to trump the traumatized stuff if allowed to do it. So I want to call your attention to something else that happens here besides that experience, right? And it's a very big deal what happens. You are choosing where you are. You now have the understanding. If you keep doing this, if you do it as often as you do that heart math, you really get a sense of empowerment. People have woken up from this experience too, from this simple technique, because you really get a sense of the empowerment of the self and that it's your choice. You can stand in your traumatized self and give that authority, or you can give authority to your healthy self. And it's basically, once you learn it's your choice, then it's a matter of exercising your choice and willing to overcome the resistance to exercising your choice. And we'll deal with the resistance in the next class. But it's always fun to just green light it. Like, this would be a great fun adventure to me to do this. And if you go on with this exercise, something else happens after you begin to understand that you're in charge. And what you begin to see is that there's something even better. This takes a while, and you have to do it persistently. But you begin to see there's something even better than the good stuff. And that's the observer self who's watching the two sides, right? And remember, I've said, and will continue to say, the observer self is linked to your true higher self, your true knowing self, your true nature, which is peaceful beyond belief, knowing beyond belief, and playful beyond belief. And it's not escaping bad for the good. It looks at the two of them and says, that's the duality. That's the duality of the world. We're caught up in this victim-perpetrator culture. We want to feel good. We don't want to feel bad. But it's an emotional game we play with ourselves once we're outside being the child in our fully expressive self, fully supported in that, fully nurtured, and fully doing the dance with the world that comes out of that, right? So the goal here is to, piece by piece, work on mastering the trauma self with techniques like this so that ultimately you even get past needing to be in the good stuff because you've healed the dualistic dynamic inside you. You don't need either. Your observer self has taken over and it's skyrocketing you to a whole other sensibility. Like when that girl woke up, it was a whole transformation. There was no back and forth anymore. She was just in a different place, and solidly in a different place, because that inner drama, which runs out in the neural net, with, the machine of that whole drama, was neutralized. And then another self came forward behind the strength of the observer self.
Coming up, Jay closes the class with some other insights about mastering feelings.
There's one other thing I want to mention about feeling before I sum up how to use this. When you're dealing with feeling, the idea that feeling for his own sake is safe, if you know you have these tools in your back pocket, it allows you to maybe feel a little bit more safe in allowing all your feelings to come up and not suppressing them, because that's part of you that thinks that's going to overwhelm me, stops quite thinking that so much. So you might let it come up just for the experience of it. Not block some negative feeling. And that itself that realization has led to a whole other school of healing of feelings, which is allowing the feelings to come up, not to be fully expressed, but just to be aware of them and to sit with them. So if you sit with a bad feeling for an hour, for example, some fear, you're going to notice and pay attention where it's in the body. You're going to notice it shifts. This might hurt now, and then that's going to clear up, and then it'll move to your back, and that'll hurt. And what's really happening is that negative feeling is energetically trying to find a grip in something in your body. And if you leave it alone, it's like your inner energetic immune system comes forward and sort of takes care of it, not before it does damage. And there is a school of therapy now of allowing that to just happen and moving through you. So if you have a lot of time and you want to experiment, that's still another technique. Just sit down and let yourself feel what you feel and pay attention to where it moves in your body and not suppress it. Maybe it's comfortable, you may not like it, but not suppress it, because in suppressing it, you're locking it into you. You're not letting your energetic immune system move it through you. So, okay. So we have an archetypal way to deal with feelings, and I encourage you all to do this. Make as many of your expectation gremlins and pictures as you need to, your allies and antagonists. Get that up there into your dream space. Play with all of these. Vent when you need to, try that. Play with Sedona method, play with heart math, play with soma breathing. Give yourself an adventure of exploring these techniques so that you will find the one that you like best. And then you might like it best for a month, and the next month, something else will work for you better. You'll switch to that. But almost everybody I've dealt with has found one of these techniques that's been usually helpful to them, something they're in alignment with. Again, not every technique works for every person. Your commitment to your own healing and your own better life and getting the trauma out of the way of your true self should be I'm going to make it a game to find my one for now, and I'm going to use it and have fun using it, because it's better to be in a non-trauma state than a trauma state. So with that, any questions before we close the session?
So with the soma breathing, the first part of the soma breathing was really powerful, just doing basic breathing and then adding the 3 layers of combining the colors and then the wrapping around the heart and the breathing. That was also really powerful, just connecting it to the heart. And I found that where I had the pain, because I actually had the pain kind of in my neck, just completely dissipated. So for some reason, when I had the color and the breath, just those 2 didn't work for me as well as the 1 and the 3 techniques. Heart math, once again, just using the heart and going between the visualization of bringing the heart into this negative charge and balancing those 2 seemed to make everything just neutralized. Just anytime you use the heart, I find it's just such a powerful transmuter. I think one of the things about these techniques is that they're so meditative, and they're actually, even though you have to draw a lot of focus to do it, they're so internalized. For me, it's actually easy because I meditate every day already, so this makes it actually easier for me to just transition into that space. And I get so relaxed, you almost forget what was even the negative charge altogether. In the symbol visualization, it was pretty abstract in a way. I visualized this sort of dark circle, but it was biting me. So there was this very tangible feeling of it. It was just biting my arms, and I could feel it, like sort of taking off chunks of muscles almost. And then my ally came to my rescue, and my ally happened to be Guan Yin. Guan Yin is a deity for compassion. And I study and teach Tibetan yoga, and so I have a really strong connection with Guan Yin already. So that was very powerful for me because I already have a connection to this particular, visualizing this deity. So it was just kind of this, it just seemed to dissipate everything that was going on with this very tangible negative experience, but the negative charge was really strong. I mean, I felt it very almost physically happening. I think probably the soma technique is I found the most effective because it was almost instantaneous. You can just go to the breath, and the breath just can immediately sort of address the negativity that's starting to come into the body on a physical level. So for me, I found the soma breathing technique the most effective. That or the heart math, because it's immediately you're thinking about the heart, and the heart is so powerful. I think it's the most powerful energy we can tap into to really change any kind of negative feeling or illness in the body or some tangible pain in the body.
This concludes Class 3 of Jay Levin's Life Mastery course. Coming up in Class 4 is Jay's teachings on mind mastery, which includes skills and techniques to deal with your inner self-critic and your chattering mind, as well as opening up to your deeper knowingness and intuition. If you are interested in an appointment with Jay, you can email him at jlevincoaching@gmail.com or contact him directly at jlevin.com. The following are testimonials from students who completed Jay Levin's course on Life Mastery Basics.
Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm a cameraman, and I am sitting here in front of you because on my first day coming in to film Jay, I was very surprised to be a part of what was happening. I was not expecting the shoot that I had walked in on, and after filming Jay for a day, I realized that what he was talking about had been something that I had maybe been searching for a long time, and was very surprised and felt very excited that what I had walked in on and became a part of was something that I would offer up to my family and friends and even my peers. I'm 28 years old, and the first thought that came to my mind was how my buddies could use this skill set to improve and better their own lives. So as I was thinking, standing behind the camera, I spoke up to Jay and felt, I was so excited about what he was talking about that he decided to put me in front to give a small testimonial, because I really felt it was necessary to let the audience know how important and groundbreaking these life skills are. Just sit back for a moment and think about your own life and your relationships. And I think what Jay is touching upon is very much the essence of community and family and friendship, and I would highly recommend it to anyone.
One of the things about this course is that it's called Basics of Life Mastery. And I think one of the things that course provides is giving practical tools that can be applied in real life situations so that we can move out of sort of the stance self, move out of the traumatized self, and really make deliberate progress and concrete progress. So I think the tools are one of the most important things, that we're actually learning skills, sets to work with another human being, to actually live and come from a very creative way and fun way of living in life. It's not like a chore. It really makes it more of this engaged way of being in the world. I think the course is extremely valuable no matter whether someone feels extremely skilled in this kind of work. I think it's still, there's always something to be learned, because the moment we think that we've mastered it, we stop learning, we stop growing, and there's always, I think, room to grow. I would say nonviolent communication and also the class on finances and relationships, those are probably the most valuable for me. And learning how to just be with a human being more on a really authentic, open, sharing level where it's very, very connected. No hiding, no gaming, really one person coming to another from the soul level.
Yes, I am feeling some shifts, more shifts of connection with people, family members. I've noticed myself be a bit more empathic than usual, than my usual stance. So I've done a little bit less of that in the last couple of days. I'm a bit more empathic, more communicating. And also I'm noticing a lot more natural bubbling of joy that's coming forward. Well, I found the course meaningful personally, first of all, in the explanation of how we as humans develop our trauma self and how we act from this trauma self. I found that I have a deeper understanding of how I'm acting and reacting, so I find that tremendously valuable. Another thing that's been clearer is how I am in relationships in terms of codependency, i.e., am I telling the truth and am I backing myself up and holding my own when I'm in relations with people? So that's coming up for heightened awareness. Another thing that's coming up from the course is the understanding that the frustration I was feeling in the past few months is me having a very profound need to express myself in many areas that I haven't been very internal.
The things that I've learned in this course that are already affecting my life are as follows. The value of the relationship, the value of the non-violent communication, honoring myself more and realizing that I don't have to commit a codependent dance with people, that just reaffirming things that I already knew and anchoring in, hopefully, at least the foundation for nonviolent communication, so I don't get into, aggressive arguments with people anymore. I'd like to do a couple of the courses again, a couple of the sessions again, like relationships and the nonviolent again, and also the self-nurturing. I'd like to do that. I would say whether you've done a lot of work on yourself or whether you've done almost no work on yourself, this is a good point to stop and take a look at how you relate to yourself, how you relate to others, how you walk through your day-to-day life, whether you go with blinders on or whether you have a full 360-degree view. I would say that this is a key mastery to starting that journey and continuing forward so you can be your full potential. I would say that that's a key point. And if you don't want to, no one's going to hold anything up to you and push you. You have to take the first step yourself.